What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's transfer tips for game week 6. So I'm going to go through some of the popular players that are being sold or brought into squads and give my opinion on whether they are good moves or not. So let's get into it. So let's start with Cole Palmer, who feels like he's a permanent doubt at the moment going into every single game. I think we're at the stage with him right now that you can't buy him. If you're on wildcard this week, I wouldn't include him. And I think if you already own him, you could probably make a case to sell him. I don't think you necessarily have to do it. But let's say, for example, you had Salah and Palmer and you really wanted to buy Haaland and you could afford it by selling Palmer instead of Salah, then I would definitely do that because you don't need someone that's 10.4 million that you can't rely on for starts every single week. This is what the latest is from Maresca. So Nizar Kinsella tweeted about this. They've got a game in the Carabao Cup midweek. So that's why we've had a press conference from Maresca. He said Cole is probably the only one that we need to assess a little bit. The rest are okay, but need to recover a little bit. And then he went on to say, on Palmer's injury, it's a kind of injury that is not black and white. It's not an injury that someday you can be better. It's not that you are playing and then tomorrow you disappear. Sometimes you can be better. Sometimes you can be worse. That's why we need to manage it day by day. So I guess the problem is, let's say we get to Friday and Maresca has a press conference ahead of Brighton at home in game week 6 and he says Cole Palmer's okay. What if he wakes up on Saturday and then it's not so good and they have to manage the minutes, or he's a sub and he has to make 20, 30 minutes off the bench? This is the problem every single week. You just don't know. And it's an issue because game week 9, Sunderland at home captaincy looks really good. Game week 11, Wolves at home looks really good. Are we going to be able to trust him by then? Maybe. And that's why if you don't own him, you don't buy him. If you're on wildcard, you leave him out and you think about what your route is back to him in game week 9. Because it might be that against Liverpool, he's played 90 minutes. He's played 90 against Forest. He's playing midweek in the Champions League and he looks fine. But this has been apparently an issue for him for months now, like before the Club World Cup. So it's not going away. Like he had that little bit of a break between the Club World Cup and the Premier League starting. He was obviously out injured, already this season. Then he's come back against Man United. Sorry, he's played Champions League like 90 minutes. Then against Man United, he can only play 20. Now, that Man United game was a little bit weird because of the red card. But I don't know. 10.4 million, I need more certainty than that. As someone that has got a route to Palmer in game week 8, I just don't see myself rushing it now. I think it's got to be game week 9. So like I said, don't put him on wildcard. Think about selling him if you've got a route to Haaland. For everyone else, I don't think you need to rush to get rid of him. But every week you're going to be unsure about how many minutes he's going to play. But if the rest of the squad looks good and you've got Haaland or you don't want him, whatever it might be, then you just play him against Brighton at home and hope for the best unless he's completely ruled out. But it's just, I don't know. I like certainty from my picks. I want to know they're definitely going to start and I want to know they're definitely going to play like 75 plus minutes most games. And with Palmer, we just don't have that right now, unfortunately. So does that make Enzo Fernandes a better option? I think the answer to that question is probably yes, because if Cole Palmer's not going to play as many minutes as we would usually expect, somebody else has to take penalties. And based on what we've seen so far, Enzo Fernandes is next in line. So for 6.7 million, he's almost like a cheaper Bruno Fernandes. Okay, he's not going to get penalties as regularly because if Palmer's on the pitch, he will take them, but he might take the odd one. He always plays. The minutes are good. He plays central midfield, but for Chelsea, he's got someone great in Caicedo next to him, so he can get forward quite a lot. Sometimes he plays number 10. He arrives in the box late. The attacking numbers are not amazing, but they're okay. He might get the odd defensive contribution, but not a huge amount. This is just Bruno Fernandes for 6.7 million without quite so much certainty around penalties. So I think for that reason and the fixtures that Chelsea have got, he is just a good pick for less than 7 million. If you think about players in and around that price, Xavi Simon's just got benched. Could that happen again? Probably not regularly, but you're not going to be as confident in his starts as you are with Enzo. Kudus, nice next 4 fixtures. You could look at him. Mitoma, if you want a Brighton player. There's not a huge amount between 6 and 7 million. Personally, I would still probably pick Ndiaye because I think he'll be a bit more attacking and he's nailed on penalties. But if you don't want him or you need another midfielder alongside him, why not Enzo Fernandes as kind of a set and forget option for quite a while? I will say this, and we're not going to know until they get another penalty with Palmer off the pitch. I still don't know if I'm 100% certain that Enzo will take the next penalty. I think João Pedro could take one. But I'm not putting all my money on Enzo taking the next penalty, basically. Think about the Crystal Palace situation last year, Eze and Mateta. You were never quite sure who was going to take the penalty. Obviously, you know, if we go on what we've seen so far, it will be Enzo. But I'm not 100% confident about that. But even without the penalties, I still think he's a fairly solid option. This is the type of player you go for if you're a manager that you want, to get someone where you just never have to worry about. They got a little bit of everything, and the minutes are just fully secure. So I like him. I wish he was a little bit cheaper than 6.7, but it's not a bad price if you want a Chelsea attacker that's not Palmer. Or João Pedro, of course. If you're unsure what transfers to make this week and you want a second opinion, don't forget to check out the suggested transfers over on Fantasy Football Hub. They've got 50% off at the moment. You can sign up using the link in the description below or scanning the QR code on screen, and it's really easy to use. So this is my team for Game Week 6. I haven't yet manually input my transfers. As you know from yesterday's video, I've gone for Haaland and Reinders. I'm interested to see whether the suggested transfers are the same. So I'm going to click the button at the top, and then it should tell me pretty quickly what moves it would make with my 2 free transfers. Surprise, surprise, it's selling Salah, getting Haaland, and buying Reinders. Interestingly, though, it thinks I should have sold Evanilson instead of Mateta, which actually is quite annoying because that thought is also going through my mind. Like, Mateta's a nailed-on penalty taker. Evanilson just isn't. I do think the fixtures are better for Evanilson over the next 4. Yeah, that's kind of annoying because as soon as I woke up on Monday, having made the transfers on Sunday, I did think, should I have sold Evanilson? But either way, I'm happy that I went for Reinders, happy that I went for Haaland. And if you want to check out the transfers for your team, obviously make sure you click that link in the description below or scan the QR code on screen. One thing that I also find really handy as well is if you want to see whether your bench is going to look better in an upcoming week, you can go through different game weeks, right? So I'm on game week 6, I can go to game week 7, but the optimize button's really handy because it really quickly shows you what your bench is likely to be in any given week. So you can just scroll through each week and just click optimize. It's a small part of the tool, but I find it really handy. So for example, in game week 8, my bench would be Dubravka Leeds at home, Senesi Palace away, Goodmanson Burnley away, and Dewsbury Hall Man City away. Arguably, maybe a slightly better bench than what I used in game week 5. So you can do that for your own team. Anyway, check it out. Link in the description below or scan that QR code on screen. So speaking of Ndiaye, we've got Ndiaye versus Grealish to talk about. A lot of people will be looking at Everton attackers this week. West Ham at home in game week 6, pretty decent fixture. Palace at home in 7, not bad, although not easy either. Game week 8, not great. It's Man City away. And by the way, Grealish cannot play in that fixture because he's on loan. Then it's Spurs at home, Sunderland away, Fulham at home, Man United away. So I think the fixtures from kind of 6 to 12 overall are not that bad. And the West Ham at home fixture being this week is obviously very enticing. Personally, and I've said this kind of the last couple of weeks, I would just pick Ndiaye. I think his goal threat's going to be higher. Grealish is going to be more for assists. He's nailed on and on penalties as well. And he might even get you the odd defensive contribution point, which Grealish probably won't. The things that make Grealish slightly better are the minutes. So far, we've seen him play 89 minutes per start. Ndiaye is 83. So he does get subbed a little bit earlier, potentially because of all the work he does, which is where the defensive contributions come from. But he is who I would go for. And the fact that he can play in game week 8 is a big thing for me because it's likely that you'll want to play that player that week. If you really love Grealish, and by the way, he's a good pick. I'm not saying he's a bad one. I just prefer Ndiaye. You could bench him game week 8 and just play someone else instead, like a 4th defender, 5th defender, or I don't know, stack on your bench or someone like that because Leeds have got a good fixture against Burnley that week. But I just prefer Ndiaye. I don't think an Everton attacker is essential or anything like that. If you're looking to wildcard and you don't have one or you want to go Enzo instead, that's absolutely fine. But I think it's a pretty good pickup. I think the fact they get to play West Ham this week, who are not looking great. Like the rumour going around is that Graham Potter's going to be sacked, but they don't want to do it this week or next week because it's Everton away and then Arsenal. And so they want to do it afterwards when the fixtures get better. I don't know how true that is, but that's the rumour going around. So you've got a West Ham at home fixture for a team that are not looking great at all already. And there's like rumours going around the manager's going to go. Like there's going to be no confidence there whatsoever. And then I don't mind Palace at home. I don't mind Spurs at home. And then you've got Sunderland away in 10. So it's only that City fixture, but it's not the end of the world to have to play one bad game in kind of 5. So I like Ndiaye. And also he's just a good price at 6.5 million. He's a bit cheaper than Grealish at 6.8. So Everton attacker looking good. My preference is Ndiaye, but Grealish is not a bad option. If you want to pick him, absolutely go for him. Just bear in mind he cannot play game week 8. So going into game week 6, only Semenyo and Reinders have more transfers in for midfielders than Ryan Gravenberch after his 1 goal, 1 assist against Everton. In fact, it's now 2 goals, 1 assist in 4 starts for him, 90 minutes each game. I can see why he's popular at 5.5 million. My opinion would be he's not a player to buy. This is a guy that last year got 0 goals, 4 assists. He's overperforming a lot right now, and it's unlikely to continue. And I know after at least I think it was after the game, he said that Arne Slot has given him more license to get forward. Maybe that's true. The stats are not backing that up. 0.07 expected goals per 90, 0.08 expected assists. That's not the signs of an attacking player. That's the signs of a defensive-minded player. Like, there'll be defenders out there this season that have absolutely smashed those numbers. Ryan Gravenberch, for me, is just not an option. He's not going to keep up these attacking returns, and he's not even that great for defensive contributions either. If we look what he's done so far this season, I think he picked it up against Everton. That's the only game he's done it in. 8, 9, 6 in the other games. So it's not like he's an Elliot Anderson where he's getting really close to it every game, or at least hitting it. He's not that close considering you need 12 as a kind of midfielder or forward to get the +2 points. So he's not amazing for defensive contributions. His attacking numbers are not going to continue. And he takes up a Liverpool spot. And I know right now, Liverpool spots are not at a premium. A lot of people are selling Salah to get Haaland. That won't always be the case. At some point, you'll probably want Salah back. You might want like a Van Dijk. And who knows, if there's an injury to Ekitike or Isak, or you might want Gakpo, there is a chance that at some point you might want triple Liverpool, especially when you look at the fixtures coming up. Like from game week 8, they're actually pretty good. Man United at home, Brentford away, Villa at home. Okay, City away and 11's not great. Then 12, you've got a real good fixture swing. Forest at home, good fixture. West Ham away, good fixture. Sunderland at home, Leeds away, Brighton at home, Spurs away, Wolves at home, Leeds at home. Like this 12 to 19 period's really good. Like if you've already used a wild card, you really want to lumber yourself with someone like Gravenberch to then have to free up the spot later on. There's a real chance you'll want triple Liverpool at some point. And I highly doubt Gravenberch is going to be one of the best 3 options. So this is not going to be for everyone, and it will probably depend on your chip strategy and or your squad structure. But Man United midfielders might be worth looking at as short-term options. So it's Brentford away in 6 and then Sunderland at home in game week 7. Man City also have nice fixtures in the next 2 in particular. Burnley at home in 6 and then Brentford away as well in game week 7. We will talk about Phil Foden in just a sec. But Fernandes and Mbeumo Cunha are worth considering, especially if you're someone that's looking to wildcard in game week 8, because then you can get rid of them before they play Liverpool away. The fixtures afterwards, 9 is Brighton at home, Forest away in 10. They're also not bad. So I would argue that 4 of the next 5 are actually okay for Man United, but in particular, it's 6 and 7 short-term punts before you perhaps wildcard or perhaps before you pivot to another player. Now, if you want the consistent player that you know is always going to start, attacking numbers are not that bad, he's on penalties, you already know it's Bruno Fernandes. And actually, with Mbeumo and Cunha, their minutes are maybe slightly more susceptible than they were earlier on in the season, because Šeško's been starting now, and Mason Mount's also back, and Amorim really likes Mason Mount. Now, for what it's worth, I think it'll be Šeško up front, and then Cunha and Mbeumo behind, or Mason Mount plays and Šeško comes out. I don't see Mbeumo or Cunha being benched, but their minutes might not be quite as good as they were in the first couple of game weeks. So they might get slightly earlier subs, but most of the time they're going to play 80 plus minutes. Earlier on in the season, a lot of questions about whether Cunha or Mbeumo was the better pick. We didn't really have too much to go on. And in some ways, we still don't have a huge amount to go on because Cunha was injured for a couple of games. But I would be slightly more tempted to go for Mbeumo now, despite saying Cunha previously. There is part of me that thinks Cunha will get more goals in this team. But Mbeumo's looked pretty good, and he's taken some set pieces as well. Like, you look at his individual numbers so far, 0.39 expected goals per 90, 0.28 expected assists. That's actually really good numbers. Now, whether he'll keep that up, I don't know, because it's only a small sample size. His numbers at Brentford last year were not quite as good. But you'd expect him to be a little bit better in this Man United side. Despite how bad Man United are, and I get it, they are quite bad, they're not Brentford, right? So I think Mbeumo looks really nice. If you don't want to go for Fernandes, that is where I would go right now. Plus, he's not coming off the back of an injury. And like I said, he's got those set pieces. Also, he's probably next in line for penalties, although that doesn't really matter because Fernandes never misses any game time. But honestly, if you want the consistent pick for the next 2 weeks, it is Bruno. I know people hate that, but it is him. And you spend that extra money. But if you haven't got that money or you don't want to go for him, I would pick Mbeumo right now, but it probably is short term. You don't necessarily want them for that Liverpool game in 8. So if you do want a short-term punt on a midfielder around 8 million, the obvious player to look at is probably Phil Foden. I think that's who most people would prefer, primarily because he plays for Man City, which is completely understandable. We expect them to score more goals, therefore Foden is going to be more involved than the likes of Fernandes, Mbeumo, Cunha, etc. Although to be fair to Man United so far, they have put up, I think, top 2 or top 3 expected goals this season, bearing in mind they've already played Arsenal, Chelsea and Man City, although the Chelsea game was obviously a little bit weird because it was 10 men after 5 minutes, so we probably should discount that one a little bit. But like I said, completely understandable people are looking at Foden. The one thing you cannot guarantee, though, is the minutes. Like, he looked really good against Man United, played centrally, then did the same in the Champions League. Then against Arsenal, he's pushed out to the right, and Bernardo Silva plays centrally instead. Probably tactical just for that game. You'd hardly know Foden was playing. Then he got subbed on 67 minutes. Now, that probably doesn't happen against Burnley, but you can't guarantee it. Whereas with Man United, in Mbeumo, for example, around the same price as Foden, he probably plays 80 plus in both games. And we are looking at very small sample sizes here. We know Foden's a better player than this, but if you look at the numbers so far this season, like Foden's at 0.24 expected goals per 90, 0.03 expected assists. Not great, but again, we know from previous seasons he's a better player than that. Mbeumo's numbers are just much better, and the minutes are guaranteed. So I'm going to go out on a limb here and say short term, next 2 weeks, I prefer Mbeumo to Foden. And yes, maybe subconsciously that's a little bit of bias because of Man United, but it's also a bias towards minutes and wanting my players to definitely start and definitely play a long time. And with Foden, I just don't have that. I suspect he starts against Burnley. I suspect he starts against Brentford. He probably plays 75 to 80 plus. I just don't have that guarantee, and that's what always frustrates me with Man City attackers. And at times, you miss out because of that, but at times you do much better. And if you're looking at Foden as a long-term move, well, okay, the fixtures for Man City are definitely better long-term. After Brentford, you've got Everton at home, Villa away, Bournemouth at home. But then you're trying to guarantee that Foden keeps playing for an even longer time. I just don't know if you need that headache. So, short-term punt, like him. Longer-term punt, still kind of like him, but there's obviously more risk involved then. But I'm telling you now, that's my hot take, although it's probably not that hot. Mbeumo is going to outscore Foden in the next 2 weeks. So I've had a few questions about Richarlison. Is he worth it for 6.7 million? Looks to be first choice number 9 for Spurs right now, and probably going to be taking penalties when he's on the pitch. I suspect that Solanke will end up being first choice penalty taker if he ever gets back on the pitch. Otherwise, I think it'll be Richarlison. So for less than 7 million, with Wolves at home, then Leeds away next 2 fixtures, he does look really good. My problem is he feels like a very short-term move. Long-term, eventually, presumably, Solanke will get some minutes. I don't even necessarily think it's the case that Solanke comes straight in as first choice number 9. If Richarlison plays well, he may just keep that spot. But he will get subbed early. Solanke will get some game time. Muani has also got to come into the fold at some point. Will that be through the middle? Will it be off the left? I don't know. But presumably most of his minutes will come in that number 9 role. So Richarlison longer term will have competition. Now you could argue for 6.7 million it's okay to take the risk. But you've got someone like Strand Larsen who's absolutely nailed at Wolves. And as long as he can, remain fit, he's probably on penalties too. So I think he's a probably slightly better option. And I know I keep talking about minutes and it's so boring to hear, but it's such a big part of FPL. And the thing is, Solanke's been injured. Richarlison's already been benched, even without that competition from Solanke and Muani. He was literally benched for the West Ham game. Why was he benched for that match? Probably because they had a Champions League game straight after. What do they have coming up soon? Another Champions League game. Now, it's probably the case that Richarlison gets a rest against Doncaster. In fact, that's almost nailed on. Then he starts the Wolves game. But then he's got Champions League. So how many minutes does he get against Wolves? And then does he definitely play against Leeds on the Saturday? Now, he might do because it's probably rest in the Cup, play Wolves, then play the Champions League, which is a Tuesday game, and the next one is Saturday. So he may well just play both of these games. But will you be able to guarantee it to yourself when he literally got benched against West Ham? I don't know. And then after that, it's international break. So it's 2 weeks for other players to recover and get fitness up. And to be honest with you, Richarlison is not, that great himself at staying fit, which is probably part of the reason he had to be managed against West Ham. So if he keeps playing, he's great. I love the guy. I remember Gameweek 37 free hit a couple of seasons ago, or a few seasons ago when he was at Everton. Absolutely smashed it. And if you told me right now he's going to play 80 plus minutes in the next 4 fixtures, I'd have him for 6.7 million. Absolutely. For me, though, there's just enough doubts to not warrant like messing around with that spot. Like if you want to take a short-term punt, then move him on. Fair enough. But if you're someone that's looking for someone you can put in and leave, that is not Richarlison. So there's probably a few people out there that still own Ekitike and are wondering what to do. I would definitely say don't buy him now because obviously Isak is a massive factor moving forward. But if you've got him in your team and you've got other issues to deal with this week, maybe Ekitike gets another start against Palace. Liverpool are playing Southampton in the Carabao Cup this week. If Isak starts that game and Ekitike's bench, there's every chance Ekitike just starts again against Palace. Now, he will get subbed early because he's been subbed early pretty much every single game he's played for Liverpool so far, even when Isak wasn't an option. But 60, 70 minutes against Palace, could that be enough? I think long term, you have to move him on. And I think this week, if you've got a spare transfer, you could definitely argue it's a good move. But if you don't, and it's for a hit, I think I would just keep him because I think he'll start again. But longer term, unless there's an injury to one of that attack, you just can't guarantee the minutes. And for that reason, I just would not want them from kind of 7 onwards. So let's go back to Spurs and talk about Pedro Porro. Over 100,000 FPL managers have sold him before Wolves at home in game week 6, which looks like a really nice fixture at the moment. I would say Porro is in the territory of don't buy, don't include him on wildcard, but probably don't sell him either. Like if you're not using a chip this week, there's every reason just to hold on to him. There's not a huge amount of other amazing defenders that you need in game week 6 where selling Porro is a priority, unless you needed the money, I guess. Like if you were doing Porro down to a 4 million or 4.5 to allow you to make an upgrade elsewhere, that might be okay. But honestly, I think he looks pretty good this week. The reason I would say don't buy or don't include him on wildcard is I just think at that price, you can go and get Tarkowski at Everton, who's basically nailed on defensive contributions pretty much every week. And even if you wanted a Spurs defender, I don't know if Porro offers enough for 0.5 million over Romero. Like Porro's hit defensive contributions once so far, and he will get them the odd time. Romero's only hit it twice, so it's not like he's a Senesi or a Joachim Andersen, but he will hit it more often. And he's also a threat from set pieces, and he's cheaper. And if Xavi Simons gets lots of minutes, which we're all expecting he will soon, he's probably going to take set pieces off of Porro. So it's not that Porro's become a bad option overnight, but he has got slightly worse. And I just think there's better value elsewhere, which is why I wouldn't include him on wildcard. If you really want a Spurs defender, I'd probably go Romero for the safety over Van de Ven at 5.1. But he's definitely not a must-sell. Wolves at home right now looks like one of the best fixtures. I don't know if that will continue to be the case. I expect Wolves to do pretty well moving forward, at least better than they have done. But right now, Spurs strong, Wolves not so strong. Decent game. And my opinion of Chris Wood is quite similar. I definitely wouldn't include him on wildcard because after Sunderland at home in 6, it's Newcastle away, Chelsea at home, Bournemouth away, which doesn't look great. Also, there are some unknowns with Nottingham Forest. Ange Postecoglou is now in charge. We don't know long-term what his setup might be. Presumably, he's going to keep using Chris Wood. I don't have too many doubts about that, but it's not an absolute guarantee. So after Sunderland at home, I think he definitely becomes expendable. And I probably wouldn't buy him either unless you are absolutely certain you're wildcarding in game week 7. If that's your plan, then Chris Wood as a 1-week punt against Sunderland at home actually seems okay. And I also wouldn't sell him this week unless I'm on wildcard, in which case I would. Because Sunderland at home is still a good fixture on paper. Yes, Chris Wood will probably get subbed early as he often does, but he's on penalties. His goal threat has been pretty good this season. It's a good fixture. So don't sell yet. Sell him in game week 7. Don't include him on wildcard. And probably don't buy him unless you need a 1-week punt. If you've enjoyed that video, make sure to give it a like and hit that subscribe button. If you want to check out your suggested transfers over on Fantasy Football Hub, there is a link in the description below, 50% off at the moment as well. Otherwise, I will catch you tomorrow for the game week preview.